I'm really delighted to welcome you all tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. I've only been here 7 weeks, so I can still call myself the new ambassador. Hi, my name is Tom Drew, and I may be new, but I also know that I've been here long enough to know that you haven't come here to see me tonight, so I'm going to keep it really quite short. I wanted to say 3 things, though, if I may. And the first one, of course, is a huge thank you to you, huge thank you to Sir Matthew Bourne. I feel really privileged, actually, to be able to have one of the world's most influential choreographers coming here with his remarkable company, New Adventures. Looking around the guests and the guest list, I don't think I need to say a huge amount to explain who you are and what you've done. But I was actually going to start, I was saying beforehand, I actually trying to work out when it was. I saw Swan Lake myself for the very first time, actually, in 1996, so a year after it opened. And that was just before the next year I headed off to Russia, where I then saw Swan Lake in Bolshoi. And I have to say the difference between the two was quite something. And in some ways, that said it all to me, really. I mean, it was really, really something. And I don't know quite how this is counted, but I see it's the longest running production in Italian history. So congratulations on that. Anyway, today is we're delighted that you're coming back to Paris. Swan Lake coming back for a performance at La Seine Musicale under the leadership of Olivier Harbour. So we're delighted to welcome you here too as well. So that's my first thing, is just to say thank you to you, Matthew. The second thank you, though, is a thank you to the British Council. And it's the British Council who made tonight possible through its Creative Spotlight series with the support of the UK Great Campaign. And again, this wasn't supposed to be a talk about Moscow, but I first discovered the British Council in Moscow in the years after the end of the Cold War. And I really saw there what actually the British Council had been able to do in that period of the Cold War in terms of maintaining some of the people links at a period when the links between our countries was a very difficult one. I stayed a rank friend of the British Council, and in fact, actually, even though my last job, some of you may know, was basically doing hard security in the Foreign Office in London, Russia, Ukraine, all things like that. Throughout that period, I actually was a trustee of the British Council, sat on the board of the British Council. So in parallel with my hard security world, I kept a link into the world of culture, of cultural diplomacy, basically because I see quite how important it is. And I think this period now, looking around the world, it is even more important than ever. The third thing to say, though, is a big thank you to you all, great friends, friends of the UK, friends of UK and France, friends of dance, friends of culture. And again, a reminder that in the end, art is actually all about people. So that's it from me. I'll be handing over to Anne, who's going to introduce the discussion. One thing I probably should have said at the beginning, though, this for me, I said I'm new, this is my first proper cultural event. And I say that because I feel really, really particularly privileged. My first event is actually to host you, Matthew. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Ambassador. First of all, I'm Anne Duncan. I'm the Director of the British Council in France. Never heard such amazing words said about the British Council. Thank you. I think this is one of the things that we try to do, is make those connections, and you're all here tonight as part of that. Just to say that, here in France, we are very proud of not only being associated with this evening's programme, but to have many other things that we're doing across the creative space. And we're very much dedicated to the kind of creativity and innovation that Matthew Bourne, you represent around the world. It's also an honour for us not only to be with you, but with Jenny Green and others in your team who lead that for New Adventures. And also with the Seine Musicale, and thank you for being present this evening, because it's really important to work with venues and incredible institutions who do reach across, and we're able to create these moments, and for the audiences, they're going to be absolutely thrilled. I too remember 1995. It was a year when I saw at Sadler's Wells. I was very fortunate to see the first of this work that absolutely amazed all of us, and you walked away and you couldn't be changed. And I still feel that moment in myself. And I think that's exactly what we've been trying to do with some of the work that we're doing in the British Council. I think that, you know, it was not only inspiring, but it's also an example of the kind of transformation that happens when you do audacious things. And we're excited to work with the GREAT campaign, which has really been working on that kind of audacious activity in the creative sector. I also want to thank Joanna Roper, because you have also joined us and really supported the cultural agenda. And I think it's very exciting, if I may say, you know, we've got two ambassadors who understand culture, and they really, really lean into it. So thank you for your personal support as well. And then I'd just like to point out that the extraordinary artistry is here all across the room. Our team is really excited to be working with many of the faces and people that are around here. There will be a masterclass taking place, for example, that you kindly, Matthew, agreed to support, so that also young people can have a chance to have access to your work. And that creates I don't want to call it pipeline in the sense of, you know, that term, but it really does support the young talent that can come through and be excited by this kind of work. So without ado, you're here actually to hear from Matthew Bourne. And I'm very excited to introduce Laura Cappelle, who's here. But before we do that, thank you. And Laura, you know, again, you're one of the, you know, people who, as a journalist, is a respected voice in dance and theatre. And, you know, you've also been a critic, and you've got the background working with Financial Times and New York Times, and that your work has helped to really illuminate and create, I think, an awareness of this artistic creation across our societies. And you're bringing a lot of the knowledge of the dance world to a conversation we can't wait to hear. But before we do that, we need a taste of the moment, and here it comes.
Hello.
Hello.
It's a privilege to be here today with you, Matthew Bourne. Thank you all for being here. I'm delighted to be having this conversation with you, especially in such a momentous year, because as has been mentioned, the 30th anniversary of this production of Swan Lake is coming up. I believe it's in November, officially.
It is the 9th of November. It's the official.
Coming up very, very soon.
Yes.
Now, perhaps to start the conversation, let's go back in time a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about how it was received back in 1995? Because I'm told that it was received quite differently from how we see it today, but I wasn't around to see that. So perhaps you can tell us.
Yeah. It was more, interestingly, the thoughts about it before people had seen it were quite interesting, because I'd announced we were doing it. The word was out that it was with male swans instead of female swans. So that information was already there. A lot of people didn't like the idea of that before they'd seen it. A lot of people thought I probably wasn't the right person to reinterpret Swan Lake. I was known for running a small, sort of mid-scale, quite quirky, sometimes funny dance company. This was the great ballet, you know, the great classical ballet. And other people would say to me, "Oh, it's going to be such a laugh, your Swan Lake. It's going to be a scream. You know, we're going to love it," thinking the whole thing would be a send up and a joke in a way, you know, and it would be funny in some way. And of course, there is humour in it. But what people weren't kind of ready for was the image of a male dancing swan. And I think when people saw that image on the opening night, it was a real life-changing thing for me and my company, but also for anyone interested in dance. It was such an iconic image, the female image of the ballerina in the tutu and the feathered headdress and the point shoes. And I honestly think, I don't know what those of you that were there at the beginning, what people thought that would look like, but I think a lot of people came expecting to see men in drag. Men in tutus I think that was the image in the head, which people didn't really want to deal with or didn't like the idea of. But when Adam Cooper, who created the role of the swan, came on in that show, on that first show, it was such a surprise that it worked, I think. This feral creature, there was something wild and exciting about his performance and the movement that we'd created together that just changed dance in many ways. I know, it sounds odd to me to say that, you know. But I know that it did have an effect. It did have that effect. The next day in the newspapers, it was all about this image of the swan. Pictures of Margot Fontaine with Adam Cooper in the, you know, sort of this cultural image that had been changed. I thought a lot of the, if there was any controversy about the show, I thought it would be to do with the royal family, because it sort of seems to depict a modern royal family, and it was at the height of a lot of royal sort of scandals going on at that time, and so, but that wasn't really picked up on, not so much anyway. It was all about the dancing swan, the image of a dancing swan.
Well, how sure were you that it was going to work when opening night was coming up?
Yeah.
That pressure as well of reimagining it. How did you
Unbelievable pressure.
No, it took me back 30 years.
Unbelievable pressure. I mean, I'd never done a big full-length show like that, really on that level before. And we had a great Tchaikovsky conductor, David Lloyd-Jones, with a big live orchestra, which we'd never been able to do normally. So that it was the pressure was enormous. But I kind of felt, what I remember feeling now is that I thought it was a good idea. I do think I thought that. And I felt in the rehearsal room, we all felt we were working on something that was interesting and that we had something to say. We couldn't have predicted what happened with it, but we did feel it was interesting, and it was something that we wanted to share with people. I remember feeling that we couldn't wait for people to see what we'd done. I felt good about it, but terribly nervous as well. And no, as you see, your original question was that how was it received in a way? A lot of it was written about it being scandalous and all that stuff. To be honest, most people loved it. It went down very well. There are a few of the older critics who couldn't handle it, a few older ballerinas who wouldn't come and see it because it was too precious to them to, you know, they're very nice about it, but they, oh no, I couldn't possibly come and see that. So it was a mix, but it was more in the positive than the negative. But the negative got a lot of publicity in a way because people like to talk about. I was called the bad boy of the ballet for a while. Which I'm not even from the ballet, so, you know, things like that.
Perhaps it's one of those cases when scandal is actually code for ahead of its time, because in many ways, like, it was ahead of its time in terms of questioning gender norms within ballet as well, and the roles that go to women and to men, that divide, which still exists today, but in the past decade, especially in the past 10, 15 years, ballet companies have been questioning that more and more.
A little bit.
Yeah. What do you think was the impact on male dancers of this production?
Enormous, I think. Along with Billy Elliot, which came about 5 years later, and we for those of you who've seen Billy Elliot film, that the actual Billy grows up and joins my company. Obviously, he's the fictional member of my company. He grows up to be the Swan in Swan Lake with Adam Cooper doing that last little moment, which a lot of people remember around the world, and it sometimes led them to us, especially internationally. But it did affect. I think it was an image that a lot of different kinds of young men could find inspiring. There's a lot of everyone in the show now in the last 20 or 30 years. It's always their dream show to be in. You can't buy that kind of thing that we get with this show. That the cast, it's their dream. It's their lifetime experience. Their dream to be in Swan Lake, in this version of Swan Lake. But I think it's also as an image. I mean, not all young guys look at a male ballet dancer in the white tights and partnering the woman in Swan Lake, think that's what they want to do. Some do, and that's all good, and that's fine, and nothing wrong with that. But there's a lot of other young people that get inspired by this kind of movement and this kind of storytelling, this kind of theatre. And so it brought a lot of new people to dance, a lot of young men in particular. You're right, it was quite significant. Even our own auditions, we used to get many more applications from female dancers at one point, and then it sort of started to shift, and to a point, maybe it was about 10 years ago or something, we started to get more from men than from women. So it was sort of that kind of change happened.
And also it brought some forms of same-sex partnering before.
Yes.
In a way that, again, was not done within ballet at the time, and is still a very minor part of the ballet world. What was that even like to develop with the dancers?
Well, there's lots to say about that in many ways, because, you know, Swan Lake, it's about a man and a swan. You know, we're not talking male, female, necessarily male, male, but we are, you know, it's there, it's in the story, but it's not straightforward. So that was sort of something that people could find their way into. And the attitude towards two men dancing together was quite extreme from some people. We did have walkouts from mostly men, actually, who couldn't handle it, because it does get quite a romantic feel about it, partly due to the incredible Tchaikovsky music. You know, it's a very romantic feel. It did have that effect on audiences, that it had a sort of controversial feel about it. It was labelled the gay Swan Lake for some time. And to be honest with you, I was told to play that down years ago, especially when we went to Broadway and to New York. I said, don't talk about that. Don't play on that. I feel so bad about it now that happened, but it was a different time, you know. And of course, now we celebrate what is in that piece, if you want to read it in that way. But it's so much more than that. But going back, I think your question initially was about...
No, I mean, you were entering it.
Well, no, just to wind that little strand up, is the journey of that in 30 years is that the show has now become, at least in the UK, a show you bring the kids to. It's a Christmas favourite. Bring the family. It's not controversial anymore. But your initial question was, what was it like with two men dancing together?
Yes, in the studio. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there are issues in many ways, especially at that time. Most, you know, particularly if we had men coming from ballet companies to dance with us, it's hard. They're used to partnering in a female partner, and then to partner each other to be lifted. Is not sort of something that many dancers were used to, you know. So you had to give yourself to that and learn how to do that. So there were the give and take of dancing a duet together was quite new and a little bit troublesome to begin with.
Did you draw inspiration from any classical productions of Swan Lake? I'm saying this because you're coming to Paris here. Our traditional version of Swan Lake, or traditional, so to speak, but the one that we see at the Paris Opera Ballet is Rudolf Nureyev's, which has like a psychoanalytical bent to it that also focuses on the relationship between the prince and von Rothbart, with sort of undertext between them. It's much less sort of developed, perhaps, than in your version.
Yeah.
We have one of Nureyev's French biographers here with us today, Ariane Dolphus, so that was a little shout out. So I wondered if you drew inspiration at the time from classical versions, if you looked at many of them, or yes.
Yeah, I watched all of them, and I knew it really, really well. Yeah. I got into ballet very late, as someone who watching ballet, not just doing, you know, dancing. I didn't start training professionally until I was 22. It was all amateur dance before that, and I grew up in a house that loved musicals and West End shows and plays and films and things, but not ballet and not opera or not classical music even, actually. So I came to it very late and discovered ballet at the age of about 18, 19. And Swan Lake was the first ballet I saw. And then, like I do with a lot of things, I became very obsessed with seeing everything many times. You know, I was a bit like a dance critic. I was sort of there a lot, seeing many different casts. And I watched the Royal Ballet a lot. I've always lived in London. And I knew the ballet extremely well. And the version that I knew very well was, I used to see Anthony Dowell dance a lot. The version that's filmed with Makarova, that version I knew very, very well. So it comes directly from knowing the ballet, watching the ballet and daydreaming about that ballet, and thinking that it could be different. I mean, I did literally have a daydream about, oh, what if the swans were male? You know, what would that do to the story? I I remember Anthony Dowell sort of looking all these faraway looks, saying, you know, I don't want to get married. I only want to marry for love, you know. And it was all, I thought there's something going on here, you know, that's quite interesting. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting? Never any real thought that I would do it. Just wouldn't it be interesting if that happened, you know? And I can tell you a little story about Anthony Dowell before we move on, if you like.
Right,
It's quite
please,
good.
go
It's
ahead.
quite good. So Anthony Dowell's a very famous British dancer who ran the Royal Ballet at the time we were making the piece. And Adam Cooper, who created this role, was a principal dancer, just been made a principal dancer at the Royal Ballet. So I had to go and ask Anthony's permission for Adam to have time off to come and create the piece with us. So I went to the office, never been there before. I was a big fan of his, you know, wonderful dancer. And I had to sit down and sort of explain myself a bit. He said to me, so you want Adam to play the Swan in your Swan Lake? So I was saying, yes. He sort of thought about it for a while and he went, is there still a prince? I said, yes. He went, oh dear. And to his credit, he later said, I would have loved to have done this. That, you know, he did really like it in the end. I would have loved to have had the chance to play that kind of a role.
Now, I wondered, how would you describe nowadays your relationship to ballet? Because, as you said, you didn't train in ballet initially. You came to it as an audience member, but many of your productions have been reimaginings of
Yes.
classic ballets. You've cast ballet dancers in the roles as well. So, how do you see your relationship to that art form?
Well, I still love a lot of it. I love watching. I always have done. I've never presented any of my versions of famous ballets that I presented. I've never been thinking like, well, this is how it should be done. It's just my idea. It's my version of that great music, usually, of the wonderful music, and I interpret that in my way. So I don't feel I'm sort of in competition with it. And I still love going to see the pieces that I've always loved, you know, really have a great, one of the few things in dance I do still enjoy actually is ballet. A lot of famous classical ballets and certain choreographers. I think I don't know how I'm viewed necessarily. I'm very outside of the ballet world. In my company is, and not really part of the contemporary world either, actually. We're sort of our own thing. My company, we're very much its own genre. I think the work we did with Swan Lake and other pieces that came around that time did sort of have an influence on some companies around the world about storytelling, about wanting to. I think there was a lot of questions about where's this audience coming from that's coming to see this work? Who are these people who are coming to see dance? How do we capture that audience? And it's about connecting and about relating to, and you know, and admittedly a ballet company is maintaining the classical choreography, the classical version, you know, but I think people were thinking about ways in which they could draw audiences in by creating new productions and telling the story in a more relevant way, or a way that was decipherable to audiences who weren't who had to read the program notes beforehand to know what was going on. And you know, that's something I don't do. I don't have scenarios in programs.
Never.
No,
Oh.
because I think it's my job to tell you a story. So I want people to come. They don't need to read anything or know anything before they come. I tell you the story, the curtain goes up, I tell you the story. You find out what happens when it happens. Not like, oh, I already read it, I know what the end is. I mean, you would never, can you imagine going to a film and getting the film before you watch it and like read, oh, I don't want to see it now. And I think dance can be that as well.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate that as a critic. So, like, having sort of choreographers say, well, you just need to read a program notes to understand. No,
It's not good.
What?
I mean, have a lot of information in the program, lots of things to share and lots of where the ideas came on, things like that, but not the story.
It's so interesting what you're saying about not quite falling within any of the perhaps existing categories. I've heard your work described as dense theater.
Yeah.
Is that a label that perhaps you relate to? But
Yes, I do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I like the word I like, which is maybe a bit grand, is showman. I like that. When some people have said that, I quite like that because I do want to put on a show. I love to put on a show. I refer to my pieces as shows, not ballets. And I don't mind when they are referred to as ballets, but I always call them shows. Maybe that's because I was brought up in that way. I used to go and see a show, and I still see it that way, about entertaining people and taking them on a journey, telling them a story that they get, and making them feel something.
It's not always an easy place to be because there can be sort of within the dance world a level of snobbery about entertainment or shows.
Yes,
so
we've been through all that.
I'm sure
over the years. Yes.
How do you feel about that nowadays? Now that you have also this legacy and so much to look back on.
I think in a way I've never changed what I've done. And the audiences have come with us. We have such a loyal audience around. Definitely, we tour every year to certain venues around the UK. We tour more than any other company, way more. So it's just a proven audience, that want to, and they trust us. They trust me to entertain them, which is, it sounds like a really obvious thing, but actually they know they're going to get a good show, and they don't really mind what it is anymore. It used to be you had to have a famous title to draw an audience in, which is still true to a certain extent, really. But now we're doing some pieces with titles that people have not heard of and don't really know where that's come from. But they go, well, it's New Adventures. It's Matthew next show. We're booking, and they trust you, and it's an amazing feeling to be trusted as an artist, that people want to come and see what they trust that you're going to give them something they will like.
And I know you focused quite a bit in recent years on talent development nowadays.
Yes.
I mean, even in Swan Lake, I believe you have dancers who weren't even born when the show was initially...
All of them.
Yeah. Okay.
The whole cast.
No one is over 30 years old.
The whole cast.
No.
There might be one or two people in the cast who were alive when the show was made. It's a funny experience because I walk amongst them like a piece of history as far as they're concerned. I sort of it's hard, they can't look me in the eye, some of the younger ones, because I've always been there for them, and this show has always been there as a thing that they want to do, But you're talking about the talent development. This is the first time we've done Swan Lake this season where all of the talent in the show has come through our own company. We've got no guest stars in the show, which we've always done up to this point, more or less. We've had people come in specially to do the Swan. This is the first time we've done it with our own homegrown talent. And also, what's percentage is it, Jenny, of this? 56% of this company have come through our talent development programs. And it's not a school. We don't have a school to feed into our company. But what we've started to do a few years back was we started to do intensives called Swan School. Then we had Signet School for a younger age group, to introduce young people to our work in a way that they wouldn't be able to get at college or anywhere in any training institutions necessarily, so that they were more ready when they came to audition for us. They were ready and understood what we require from them, because they need to act and as well as dance and perform in a certain way. So that has become a really important part of what we do, and it feeds the wider industry as well. Not everyone comes into the company, but I think, as we were saying earlier, the particular inspiration that this company has for young people, we can't ignore that. We have to nurture it. We have to have the programs where they can come and learn with us.
So you mentioned acting, but I'm guessing, I know you have dancers who come from different technical trainings. They can come from ballet, from other genres as well.
Yeah.
What brings them together? What do you teach them? And maybe what does it take actually to be one of your swans these days?
Well, to be a New Adventures dancer, I prize individuality. I like people who think for themselves a bit. I don't like everyone to look the same. If you're telling stories and you've not got an enormous cast, you want everyone to look a little different. Otherwise, because what society, what world do we live in where everyone looks the same, you know? So I prize that, you know, the thing of, so look, individuals, shapes and sizes, whatever it may be, you know, and I hope we achieve that as many shows as we can. So, but I'm looking for dancers who are generous. Their acting comes through doing, actually. Most of them are not trained actors, but they're fully trained dancers. And I look for a generosity of spirit of wanting to give to the audience. And that's the beginning of acting for me, of wanting to tell their story, you know. So it's, but they sort of learn on the job, and they learn from the more experienced people in the company. I find that if you're in a show with someone who's got a lot of experience and they're acting at you, you kind of have to act back. You can't sort of just blank it out, you know. So you have to, that's how they learn. And they're so good, a lot of them. Now the level of performance and acting for many members of our company is so detailed and so wonderful and so heartfelt, and it's really incredible.
Now, how much do you tweak a production like Swan Lake over the years, over 30 years? Like, do you like to change your own work? Some choreographers like to keep it as it was. Some choreographers like to change it. I know you've had new scenery as well. So
we have, yeah. This production is a sort of newish one. No, I do tinker with my own work quite a lot and rethink it. And over a long period of time, you know, audiences change as well. You have to respond to a modern day audience as well. So I kind of believe in being within the audience and actually experiencing what the audience is feeling about a show, and then you learn more about it. And so I do change things. I do develop things. I mean, when Swan Lake was first done, it was done very quickly. In terms of it, as a long piece, as we know, you know, a lot of music to fill. So a lot of refining needed to be done in the seasons that followed, you know. So that's all happened over the years. But different sense of humor, some things like that have changed. But I must say I don't understand choreographers and directors who create a piece and then go somewhere else the next day and don't stay for the next show, because that's the beginning of the second part of the work you have to do. Is once you've got it in front of an audience, how's the audience talk to people? How are they responding to it?
Is that one of the reasons why you haven't necessarily licensed your work to other companies, allowed other companies to take on some of those productions?
We're very protective. We have been asked a few times over the years.
Sure.
We're in discussion at the moment with one of our pieces going somewhere. It's because it takes a little more intensive time, and often a ballet company can't give you that full time period that you need to change the way people think and for them to do their research that I sort of require for the shows as well. And you can't just come in and do half a day on this and go to something else. And so it doesn't often fit into the schedules of those companies. And we're quite protected because we like to be the company that does that piece and no one else. And somebody asked me earlier, we were talking about licensing. People sometimes think my Swan Lake is on all the time somewhere in the world. It's not. It comes around every 5-6 years or something, and it's only my company that perform it. It's only my company that's ever performed it in 30 years.
Could have gone the Broadway sort of model with different touring companies performing the same production,
Yeah.
but you've never wanted to do that.
I mean, even when we went to Broadway in '98, we took the company with us. It was still New Adventures, or it was called something else in those days, Adventures in Motion Pictures. But it's essentially the same company, but we took the company with us. And that's what we do in all our touring. It never becomes different people. Yeah.
It's been quite some time since Paris has seen this production, although we've seen other works of yours in recent years. Edward Scissorhands, Romeo and Juliet.
Juliet, yeah.
Most recently, but Swan Lake, it's been nearly 20 years. Am I mistaken?
That's right.
Yes.
Yes, I was surprised to discover that as well. Yeah.
I know, especially since this is a production that people who love dance and ballet will usually know. I teach dance history, and when we talk about Swan Lake, it's one of the reimaginings that comes up again and again. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah. So how does it feel to bring it back to Paris now, to bring it here?
Well, great. We haven't done it yet, but we start tomorrow, and I can't wait to feel the reaction from our audiences. And it's it has changed over those years. It is a new production from the one that was last year in terms of Les Brotherson's designs, and we have some new sort of more contemporary theatre technology in it, I suppose you could say. A little bit of projection, a few new ideas in it, very subtle but really effective, I think. So it's quite a different production we're showing. But I don't know, let's see. I mean, I'm excited to, I think Parisian audience likes something something that's different, that challenges, I think. Usually challenging something that people already know I feel a French audiences really enjoy. So let's see how this generation is the next generation here of audiences, isn't it? They're going to see it. Hopefully it does attract a young audience for us this time.
Now, perhaps we can open the conversation to some questions. If you have any for Matthew Bourne in English or in French, we can translate them as well.
Is the reaction different from country to country? Yes, it can be for all shows, actually. And I do take the time when we go to a new territory or a new country or a new place we've not been before, spend time to sort of work out what the audience likes and doesn't like, or they seem to respond to something and not other things. And we will talk about it as a company the next day. And then we will see if it happens again that night. And we wait for a pattern to emerge of how this audience reacts. And then we will understand that audience more. Some audiences are very quiet, some are very loud. And that's interesting as well, because the performers, if you've just come from a place like in Los Angeles, where they're very noisy and they react to everything, and then you go to China or Japan, the audiences are very respectful and quiet. It can feel like the show doesn't work. And we have to talk about that as a company. Go, no, they're absolutely loving the show. The concentration is incredible, but it's just different. We discuss those things about how those things change. And humor's different everywhere. You have to acknowledge sometimes you're in an audience in a new country or new city, and suddenly everyone laughs, and you go, what are they laughing at? You don't know what it is that struck them as funny necessarily. Oh my goodness. I can't think of one off the top of my head. It happens quite a lot though. And you just sort of, I think sometimes, there's a couple of things. I think you mentioned the royal family. I think people think it's quite, in some countries that we've gone to with Swan Lake, they think it's quite daring to represent a royal family. And that can create giggles, but it's supposed to be funny anyway. It's supposed to have a certain amount of humor in it anyway. But the interesting thing about the royal family thing is we think that the actual royal family really like our Swan Lake. It's historically over the years, it's the Queen requested it for the Royal Variety performance, I was told, and as soon as Swan Lake happened, I got lots of invitations to the palace and had lunch with the Queen and all these different receptions and things. We never spoke about it, but there was a sense that it was welcomed because it's actually quite a sympathetic portrayal, and something of a royal person in a position of being that person, a royal prince. You can't be yourself, really. So I think there's an appreciation of it. And I did ask Princess Margaret once if she'd seen it, and she said, I have the video.
Any more questions? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you, Laura, for the questions too. By the way, I'm also a big fan of musicals. That joy and that emotional connection that you get from the musicals. But my question is really, you talked about, and I'm paraphrasing, sort of crafting a new path back in the mid-1990s. It was very different, it was very new. Billy Elliot came a little bit later. Can you look back and pinpoint anything where you saw a tide of change in arts or dance or culture that you perhaps drove forward as a result of this production, this show? And second part of the question, what's next? What else can we look forward to?
Well, I think it's hard to think back now to how difficult it was as a young man to want to go into dance, it's still true to a certain extent. It's still, young men still get bullied. You know, unfortunately, that does still happen in small towns and places all over the world, I'm sure. But I do think there was a sense of it becoming a lot more of a cool thing to do through Swan Lake and Billy Elliot and several other things that happened around that time. And I think that really did change people's viewpoint of what a male dancer could be. And it takes big images like that are widely seen to shake off years of prejudice and sort of bigotry about male dancing and silliness that was talked about for many years, cliches, you know. So I think having those images really, really helped. And Billy Elliot was one of them. And I've got lots of Billy Elliots have come into my company, actually, funnily enough, who were Billy on the London stage. You know, we've got several of them, haven't we, at the moment? One of them playing the Swan this week. And so that's a legacy as well, actually. That legacy of the stage production of Billy Elliot produced a lot of young guys who wanted to be in that show and have gone on into the industry. And they're the best people, aren't they, Jenny, to work? They're the most polite, they're the most professional. Whatever they did with them in that show was fantastic. You know, they come in and they're really great people to work with. So that's one thing. What's the other question was about what's next? Yeah, good question. Well, the company's very busy. We have 13 full-length works now. We've talked a lot about Swan Lake today, but we have a lot of other shows. We're in rehearsal as of this week for the Red Shoes, which will be in London this Christmas. And we have the Carman coming back next year, and Cinderella set during the Blitz. And we've only ever done, I mean, Thierry will know. Thierry produces our shows here. Thank you, Thierry, for being here, and thank you for everything you've done for us over the years. But we've only done 3 shows of my shows here in Paris, so we've got a lot more we can bring. So we've done Swan Lake, and we've done Edward Scissorhands and Romeo and Juliet. So there's a lot more. You know, we've got another 10 that we could do. So that's to come here, hopefully. We'll see. I've kind of got to a point where I've ticked a lot of the pieces that I wanted to do. I'm in such a privileged position, having my own company, to decide what to do. And next year I want to do this, and then we make it happen somehow. Rather than waiting to be asked or waiting to be commissioned, or, you know, those kind of things that most choreographers have to do. So I've had that great experience of going, you know, I really want to do this. I want to do Red Shoes for many years, and then I did it. And so it's harder now to find a new work. Much harder to find the subject matter, of what's going to work for a dance theatre piece. I'm looking. I'm not being coy. I've actually found what the next thing might be. So anyone when we have a chat in a minute, have drinks, if anyone's got any ideas, the piece they think should be a dance piece or should be a dance story, let me know, because it might just spark the interest. You never know.
Right.
I just wanted to ask about the music. Obviously, you take the approach of being very much a co-author rather than following very closely the historic version. How did you feel sort of in the process of creating the choreography with the aesthetic of 1930s? Did you feel that you were constricted rather by Tchaikovsky's music, or you wanted maybe to have.
Well, so restricted by the music. You say you're
Yes,
talking about.
whether you had the instinct of adding some more contemporary 1930s music.
With Swan Lake, you mean?
Yeah, because the aesthetic is obviously very.
Yeah, no, I musically, I mean, if I'm going to do one of those classic pieces, the music to me is the script. I have a very protective approach towards it. I want to rethink that music. I don't want to reorder it very much. I want to. My challenge to myself is to tell a story to that music as written, mostly, and the Tchaikovsky ballets. I've done all three of them, and I've done two Prokofiev ballets. The music was written to tell a story. Each scene, each piece of music was written to tell a particular part of that story. And even though I might not do exactly or anywhere near what was intended, it is storytelling music. So there's always things I want it to come from the music. I never just put the music on top of choreography I've already created. I choreograph to that music. So for me, it's very important. But I have done quite a few pieces where there's been original score or original arrangements, and I have done that version as well, with new music. So, but if I'm taking a famous score, I want to produce that score. I want to produce a new version of that score. Yeah.
One last question. It's very multidisciplinary, actually, what you did. We would say in today's terms, because it used to be very much separated, music and ballet and dance and theatre.
Yeah.
And you've combined them all in your career as that approach. What advice do you have to young people today when you're talking to those in your company who just come and they're looking up to you? And, what is it your story that you're telling them that helps them to be inspired to go to the next step?
Well, what I do get asked similar sort of questions about dancers or choreographers and things. I have to think back to myself when I went to college, and I tried to do. Went to a contemporary dance college called the Laura Centre. I tried to do what my teachers wanted me to do, and I tried to fulfil the tasks and be that kind of choreographer, and because I was learning, and it was good to do those things. But there came a point where I felt I had to fall back or go back to the things that I loved, that were me, that I'd grown up with, that my parents introduced me to. And that's where the amalgamation of all the technical things and the structural things I'd learned were married with my own love of film and theatre and musicals and all sorts of other ends, as well as ballet and contemporary dance. So I think what I say to young people is don't follow the trends. Be a version of yourself. Don't be a lesser version of somebody else that you admire. Take that inspiration from the person or the choreographer or the dancer you admire. Use that, but then create your own world. Use your own world, and then people will come to you. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
It's quite a beautiful note to end on. Thank you. Thank you so much to the British Embassy, to the British Council as well, to all of you for being here.
Yes, thank you all for coming.
And to so Matthew Bourne and
Thank
the
you.
Matches team. Thank you very much. I hope you
Thank you
enjoyed
so
the
much.
parade.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.